Welcome. Today we're going to break down the official syllabus for the ISTQB Certified Tester and Test Automation Strategy. Mastering this isn't just about passing an exam. It's really about learning the framework that stops those huge, expensive automation projects from going completely off the rails. So let's walk through the core concepts you're going to need. So we're going to stick right to the official syllabus here. We'll move chapter by chapter, starting with the basic objectives and planning, then diving into development, figuring out how to measure success, and finally wrapping up with how to keep improving.
All right, let's kick things off with Chapter 1, Introduction. This is the bedrock, the absolute foundation. Before anyone writes a single line of automation code, you have to build a solid strategy on really clear objectives and know what the critical success factors are.
The goals for this section really boil down to three fundamental questions. First, what's the actual business reason for our automation? Second, what are the technical things that are going to make or break this project down the road? And third, and this one is so important, how do we figure out if the massive financial investment is even the right move for this particular project?
These are the big ticket items you have to evaluate before you commit a dime. You've got to think about more than just the upfront cost of tools and training. Where is the project in its life cycle, the SDLC? The earlier you start, the better. And you absolutely must weigh the project's lifespan against the constant cost of maintenance. I mean, if a project ends before the automation pays for itself, it's a failure. Simple as that.
Okay, Chapter 2. This is all about resources. Here, we're moving from the big picture strategy to the nitty-gritty, the money, the tools, and the people you need to actually pull this off.
The objectives here are super practical. We're going to dig into the total cost of ownership for different tech solutions, we'll pick apart all the different software licensing models, and crucially, we'll define the exact roles and skills your team has to have to even have a shot at succeeding.
All right, let's get our key terms straight, exactly as the syllabus defines them. The Test Automation Engineer, or TA, that's your specialist, the person with the coding chops to build the whole thing. The Test Automation Solution, or TAS, now that's the entire ecosystem they build. It's not just the tools, it's the frameworks, the processes, the whole shebang.
The licensing model you pick has a huge impact on your budget and how easy it is to use the tools. Open source is great, right? No license fees. A per-user license is predictable if your team size doesn't change much. Floating licenses give you flexibility for bigger teams. And runtime licenses are perfect for the cloud, where you just pay for what you use. You have to look at each one and see what makes sense for your strategy.
Now for Chapter 3, Preparing for Test Automation. Okay, this section is a big one. The strategic thinking you do at this stage is what separates the successful automation projects from the ones that just turn into these expensive, unmaintainable nightmares.
This is all about making smart calls up front. We're going to look at different ways to structure our testing effort, how the architecture of the system under test, or SUT, basically tells us which approach to take, how to really pick and choose which tests are even worth automating, and finally, what kind of testing is just plain impossible without automation.
And here we have it, the Test Automation Pyramid. This is the goal. This is what you're aiming for. See that wide base? That's a ton of fast, stable, cheap unit tests. That strong foundation means you need fewer of those slow, complex UI tests at the very top.
And then you've got this, the ice cream cone. This is a classic anti-pattern. A total what not to do. Here, the team is relying almost completely on slow, brittle, and really expensive UI tests. This is a recipe for finding bugs way too late in the game, which just makes them way more expensive to fix.
Now, the hourglass shape, you see this one a lot. It highlights a really common problem, a missing middle layer. You've got plenty of unit tests at the bottom and a lot of UI tests at the top, but there's this huge gap right in the middle for integration testing. This is where bugs between different components can hide until it's way too late.
And last up, the umbrella. This shape shows you're pretty much completely dependent on UI testing. You often find this with older legacy systems where it's just not possible to do lower-level testing. The result? The slowest feedback you can imagine and a maintenance nightmare.
Okay, Chapter 4 takes us right into the action, actually developing and deploying these automation solutions. This is where the rubber meets the road, building the TS and getting it working in your test environments.
It's really important to get this. Deploying a task isn't a one-and-done thing. The the risks change over time. That first deployment, you're probably going to run into execution times that are way longer than you planned, and all sorts of configuration headaches. But later on, when you're just maintaining it, you have new problems, like making sure an update to your automation solution doesn't break all your existing tests.
So, you've done all this planning, all this building, now what? How do you actually prove it was worth it? This chapter is all about how we measure the impact, calculate the return on investment, and report our results back to the people holding the purse strings.
To make the case for automation, you have to talk about ROI, or return on investment. At its heart, the formula is pretty simple: savings divided by investment. But to get there, you've got to measure both sides. Savings is usually about time. How much time did we save by running this automatically versus manually over and over again? An investment is all the time you spent setting things up, writing scripts, and doing all that ongoing maintenance. This chart is awesome. It really shows you what that ROI journey looks like. The red line, that's your cumulative investment. It starts high and keeps climbing with maintenance. The blue line is your savings. It starts slow, but then it really takes off as you run more and more tests. And that spot where they cross, that's the turning point. That's the beautiful moment your automation has officially paid for itself and is now making you money.
And this brings us to a really critical point from the syllabus itself. Calculating ROI isn't just some academic exercise. It's a tool for making huge strategic decisions. The syllabus says it flat out. If your project is going to end before you hit that turning point, then from a purely financial view, it's just not a justifiable investment.
All right, let's bring it home with Chapter 6. This is all about implementation and continuous improvement. Because look, a successful TAS isn't something you just build and forget about. You have to manage it, maintain it, and constantly make it better to get that long-term value. Switching from manual to automated testing, you have to be careful. It's a tricky process. Your plan needs to account for the fact that costs will actually go up for a while because you're running both systems at once. To make it sustainable, you have to clean up overlapping tests, centralize your data, and manage dependencies. And here's a golden rule. Always make sure a manual test case is correct and valuable before you spend a single second trying to automate it.
So if you're going to remember one thing from this whole syllabus, it's this. A winning test automation strategy is holistic. It has to line up with what the business actually wants. It has to be backed up by a solid ROI analysis. You need the right people with the right tools, and you've got to be in it for the long haul, using data to constantly get better.
And that wraps up our overview of the ISTQB Test Automation Strategy syllabus. So as you're studying for your exam, I want you to think about this. Based on everything we just covered, what's the one single thing you could prioritize that would make the biggest improvement to test automation where you work? Because at the end of the day, applying this knowledge is what really matters.